Hello all, I hope you're doing well. Very soon I will turn 39, and while that's not quite 40 yet, it has got me thinking about middle age, about making that jump from what is really a young adulthood, into more of an established middle age, established manhood. I think this is marking the change in what I'm doing online, moving a bit between, political commentary and before that, coaching with men into more sacred initiation, which is, I think, what I'm really being called to now, which means changes inside of me and also hopefully what I can offer as well. So I thought I'd do a video laying out some of the key things I've learned up to this point in my life, and I hope this will be valuable for some people out there, because it took me a long time to learn some of this, well over 10 years. Number one, I say this a lot because it's so important, but you have to embrace being lost. Very wary of personal development, of the politics world. Everybody seems to want to have their shit together. And while I can understand that, the male ego especially wants everything to be ordered, I think we lose something when we want everything to fit neatly together and be this person who's got it all worked out. I think we're missing the depth of what we are when we do that. You might feel a bit better mentally by saying, I've got it all figured out. But what you're really doing is closing the door to a much deeper wisdom within. And in my experience, wisdom is something that you can't impart by just telling someone or reading a book. You can point someone in the right direction, and I've been pointed in the right direction and many times not taken that route. But I've had to realize that the only way for us to learn is to go through that process of enduring and being willing to say, do you know what, I don't know. I'm a bit lost right now. And sometimes that journey can take weeks, sometimes it can take years. But the longer you endure, the more you keep your heart and mind open, the more you keep inquiring, finding the right figures. Might be online, might be in person, might be in a book, might be in some challenge you've got to do out there. Bit by bit, collectively, you just get pointed in the right direction and know where you must go. Very often there might be something you have to sacrifice in your life or something you have to do, which is a very big challenge. And slowly, we start to realize that wisdom is distinct from knowledge. This phrase, knowledge is power, I think it goes back to Foucault, but I think it's a bit of a poisonous phrase that. I don't agree with it. Wisdom is the real power. Knowledge is worldly power. But if we're really on the spiritual life, then we must give way to wisdom, which will speak to our soul. And it won't really matter your externals when you're rooted in wisdom. You'll be much better served. You'll be loved by God when you're in wisdom. This isn't to say you can't be intellectual and really bright and smart. That's great. But just be wary of your intellectual ego. The intellectual ego, while the guy might be weedy and small, can be exactly the same in its egoic energy as the guy who's, blasting steroids, pumping iron down at the gym, bumping into people on his way home and staring them out. It's just a different way the ego expresses itself. Wisdom is deeper than all of that. And it's not to say that working out or reading and learning are bad. They're wonderful things, but they've just got to be right sized beneath the overarching guidance of wisdom. And that will lead to a much better life and a life that's aligned. You'll also have a better energy that way. Number two, and this is a really big one, especially for young men in this day and age, because it's really confusing out there. You're getting told one thing by the mainstream. There's a lot of counter information online. It's hard to know who to believe. And you'll be yelled at and called all sorts of retard if you don't follow a particular line. And you can think like, I don't know which way to go. It's a bit confusing. Well, my experience has been try and learn from everything. Keep your mind open, keep your heart open, integrate that knowledge and then apply it and see what's true. And a case in point with me was the red pill. I've said before, really naive as a youngster. Parents divorced, so raised by a woman, education was feminine, culture was feminine. I grew up with what I call the Chandler Bing fallacy. Just be sardonic, sarcastic, and witty, and kind of down on yourself, self-effacing, and eventually, some girl like Monica will fall in love with you. That doesn't happen, or at least for 99.9% of us it doesn't. The reality is that you're just going to come across as sort of weird and frightened of life and in a kind of dark cloud. And the red pill really helped me. It really pulled me out of that, saying, look, stop acting like this loser and start to be a man. Embrace masculine energy, embrace masculine pursuits. And that really spoke to me. And it really aided me in the dating market. All of a sudden, I realized women like me now. And for this point, I was like, 25, 26. For all my life, I've been so confused and been trying to be this perfect guy that women tell you they want, and I've just been rejected. And overnight now, I'm just basically, got many choices. Now, I have to be really clear as well in that I sort of turn against the red pill. And that's not because there isn't any truth in there. There is wisdom in there as well. But because I saw that some of it was getting a little bit toxic. Some of it was falling into this online ideology that is still really strong around today of it almost despises femininity. Femininity is constantly hypergamous. It's almost evil in some expressions. And I remember thinking, this is getting a bit nasty. Like, I love femininity. I love the dance between the masculine and feminine, and I love how that plays out. And I noticed that was getting very strong results in the dating market, which I wouldn't so much promote now. But back when I was more, pre-Christian, I was thinking, communing with the feminine is a beautiful thing, which it is, but it's just when you're overdoing it, it can toxify it. But anyway, the point I'm making is I started to think a lot of these guys are using this, number one, as a vector for their own anger, their own hate, their own wounds in life, which again are legitimate. Some guys have been really hurt by women, and the mainstream just ignores it. In fact, it just laughs at them. I mean, it's extremely cruel. But anyway, it's understandable why they adopt this ideology, because it's like a defense mechanism in some senses. But I also noticed it was stopping them really living. Yeah, okay, it was giving them the cheat codes of how women work and so on, but instead it just kind of made them think, modern life is just screwed, everything's degenerate, what's the point? If they were basically good looking with money, they just bang all the women relentlessly, which again causes such social decay. And if they were struggling, they'd just become black-pilled, and women are just so dark and twisted and, all that sort of thing. But I came to see that a lot of these guys have been wounded, and they were using it as another ideology to defend themselves, almost like a counter of feminism. And this was a very powerful experience for me, because I thought, okay, I've learned what I need to learn here, but now it's time to move on, because I'm going to get pulled down by the quicksand and become quite bitter. And in my old pursuits, the men's groups and some stuff I used to put online, there was always one or two that would be really unhappy with me challenging the red pill. And I get it, because it was like challenging their religion. This has made me safe. I remember a few sort of Tate denizens, would do their best to try and bring you down. I remember one guy saying to me, like, how can you get with a woman? She's just going to end up cheating on you. That's all they do. And if you believe this, you're going to have beta kids, and they're all going to grow up for, masculine kids to step on their heads as they're on their way to greatness. And I remember this guy saying that, he's some black guy, and, they're like, yeah, N-word and all that stuff. But I was thinking, this guy's just poisoned. You can see it's just this venom that's coming out. You can always, I think this is why I believe Jesus is very powerful, because Jesus is very good at showing you demonic energy and how it works in people. And you don't hate them for it. You just see, look, you've because there is a wisdom that he's trying to impart there, that's somewhere in there about not trusting, toxic women and raising your children in a masculine way, which is all really true, but it's become really toxified, and he's just attacking because you're threatening his worldview, really. And it's become quite poisonous. And I started to see, like, I don't know, man, you're losing your way a bit there. And this, again, just allowed me to move more into a deeper understanding of Christianity, of like, you need to be based, but you don't lose the love inside of you as well, because you can get really ill that way, and the world can too. So this is number two, you learn everything, but integrate it, but apply it, and be confident to take home your own results and see what works. That was a big eye-opener for me. I don't want to brag, but I realised I was doing quite well in the dating market. And then I got to know some of these red pill guys, pickup guys in London that had YouTube channels and were quite notable. And I was like, your girlfriend is bang average, and she's not a nice person. And it really opened my eyes. I thought, these guys talk a lot, but they don't know how to act. Because, again, I believe they didn't have any love in them for the feminine, and that will lead to a sort of robotic relationship. So, again, you may disagree with me, that you're welcome, but apply your own learnings and be confident to stand by them no matter what the world says. Next thing I think really important to mention is we all sin. I think we all look up to men. We all look up to, our heroic figures, but we must remember everybody sins. Everybody's flawed. People will let you down. And I'm not trying to be black-pilled and bitter. That's just a reality we're going to have to learn. Most people are better than others. That's true. Lots of decent people out there. Some really awesome people out there. But nobody's perfect. I was thinking the other day after I made the video on Usyk, like I should have said at the end, he's a wonderful man, but let's not make him a god, because only God is God, And the rest of us as human beings are flawed, and I'm sure Usyk would accept that. I often thought it was a wonderful irony, though it's not wonderful what happened to him, but Jordan Peterson, this hero, to all these millions of men in the West, but he ends up in a rehab, and he's the very guy, speaking about order and all this sort of stuff, and it's almost like God's beautiful irony is in that. He's almost telling us, like, by all means listen to this guy, but he's only a man. He's flawed like you are. We can't really do anything by ourselves. So the point I'm saying here isn't just don't trust anybody or don't bother striving for anything. It's the opposite. By all means we should trust, but be aware that men are flawed, and by all means we should strive to live that perfect life, but know that it's going to be difficult, we're going to fall short, and we have to make restitution when we do, and we will stumble our way to the correct path if we're honest and true. And again, remembering that we're not perfect. Number 4, big one in the modern era, confidence is amazing. I think I've lacked confidence at key times in my life. I've always doubted myself. I don't think I'm particularly bright, but I think I'm half bright. And I think people who think about things a lot will question themselves a lot because they'll pick at their own flaws and think, do you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have said that way because I don't want that person to think that way. I'm also quite high in empathy, which is a feminine trait. Someone said on the show the other day, like, how can you say men stuff when you're high in empathy? That's a non sequitur. You can recognize the truth of the life while recognizing your own flaws in a masculine sense. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect, referring to the last point. And one of mine is I'm very high in empathy. I feel very sorry for people. And I struggle to see people in pain, which is, something I have to work on. It's not saying it's good to see people in pain. I think you get the point I'm making. It's just there's a balance to be struck, because that can veer into a little bit too much of feminine energy. Again, it's something I have to work on. Raised by a woman in a feminine culture, you have to work hard on those boundaries. Why I found the masculine side very healing, and why I think moving towards confidence is very healing. But we must also remember that confidence, while an awesome thing to strive for, is also something that can blind you. Blind confidence can lead you to walk into all sorts of danger. You have to be wary of confidence turning into arrogance, and confidence becoming a shield to protect your ego. Because at the end of the day, your ego is sometimes pulling you away from what you truly are. And we have to have the confidence to let our ego be hurt. And I would go back to my empathetic side here and say, that doesn't mean chastise yourself. You get that a bit in Christianity sometimes. People think they should just hate themselves. That's not what I'm promoting. But we should let our ego be hurt. And then you're right, you might need to lick your wounds. It's like when I was doing spiritual work for the first time, this guy I was working with said to me, I was telling all my brutal past and my trauma and my pain and my anxiety, and he said, you're very self-obsessed. And I remember thinking, how dare you, if you've been through what I've been through, But after a couple of days, looking at my wounds, I was like, he is right. I go into a room and I think, is that girl thinking about me? I wonder what I said earlier. People didn't laugh. Maybe it wasn't that funny. Maybe I should work on the joke here. Maybe I should have said this. I thought, I am self-obsessed. Everything revolves around me, and it's a human sin in a way. It's a human-centric worldview rather than, if you like, a God-centric worldview, which is more resting in being. And again, I'm far from perfect in that now, but if we can recognize when we're getting in the way of ourselves, then it can help. And also, again, allowing our ego to be pierced a bit, but not to an extent where we're just, whipping ourselves. I think it's more about recognizing it, drinking it in. Doesn't mean it's always true, by the way, that things people say about you. It's worth checking in with some trusted brothers, an elder, and seeing if it's true, and then working through these things, and you will find your path, On that note, we do need our elders. It's very hard these days. I think the boomer generation really moved away from tradition, so we don't really have that. But I still think we can seek elders in each key domain of life, the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover. Ideally, we'd have these people in the real world. A sort of king figure, a lover figure is very good in the priest. They can teach us about divine love and be a leader for us. Warriors can be good to find in local boxing clubs, MMA clubs, even just energetic warriors. Maybe, you join a public speaking class and there's someone who's really confident in front of people. There's a warrior energy to that. There's also a magician quality to that. So we should be looking for these figures in the real world that we can feed off and learn from. But of course, online, is a treasure trove for that. There's all sorts of people that you can look to in differing areas. For the warrior, I've always looked up to Jocko Willink, actually. I really like him as a warrior figure. He's very calm, always accepts challenge. And it's not in my nature to do that, but I really look up to him, and I really find his little talks very helpful. I don't listen to his long podcast, but just 5 minutes. I'll be like, yeah, that's really powerful warrior energy, which really helps me. Another one, of course, is tribe. I think it does help to try and find your tribe and be all right with being a loner. Sometimes God wants us to be alone for years sometimes, so we can find our people. It took me a long time. And I think one thing that's really helped me as well is finding your tribe, but also trying to maintain someone from each era of your life. Like coming up to 40, there are several different eras of my life where I was different people. And of course, there's some people who've known me throughout all of it, family and maybe close friends. But for each of these eras of life, it's really nice to just have that touch point in your life to reach back and say, how are you doing? That person that remembers you from there and can see the change in you. I found that very valuable. Big one, number 7, is coming to peace with your parents. This is a massive one for me. And I think therapy culture does not help with this. I'm not saying that parents are massively influential on us and they don't have a huge effect. But I think Carl Jung put it beautifully when he said, look, if we're still angry with our parents, we're still a spiritual child. We're not growing beyond what they are because we're stuck in that childhood mentality, that zeitgeist of the adolescent. And we do need to do what we can to move on through that. Now, that is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a key part of the 7 steps. Free call is on that tomorrow, actually, if you want to join. But I do think making peace with our parents in whatever way we can is so important. Having kids is one that helps because you realise how hard parenthood is. Now, I understand some parents are worse than others, but it does help us learn. It's not easy and you do make mistakes. Number 8, really big one for me, has been finding out about the importance of physical health in life. It is just an absolute gimme. It's part of the non-rational, which I'm really fond of. It doesn't make sense why it's so good for you. I'm sure Andrew Huberman could give a 3-hour lecture, but I don't really like that. I just like the magic of it. You feel a bit, slow, lethargic. You get in the gym, do some weights, go for a run, whatever it is. And you just feel this rush. You feel these endorphins. Your body looks better. You feel better. It's like you've just been in this really beautiful way, just sparked up a little bit. I think I would say if you're young, smash it. That's what I did. Before I got married, before I had a lot of real pressures on me, financial pressures. I remember I was working in London, first time I'd earned half decent money, no wife, just rent to pay, which was expensive, but still, I thought, I'm going to smash it now. And I really did. For 2 years, I got as big as I could, gym 3 times a week, really hit it hard. And I said to myself at the time, I'm never going to get to do this again. I was about 30, I think, 31. It was just after this transformation I've been through. And I really loved it. But when the time came to get married, I was like, all right, I'm willing to let go of this. Doesn't mean I stop working out. I still work out probably twice a week now. But that's all I can really afford because I've got work, I've got a family, I have other demands. And it's all good. I'm healthy, but I'm not in the shape I once was. I'm not like jacked. And a lot of, the bros out there will be like, yeah, bro, if you're not going to take your health seriously, you're going to die young and all that stuff. I don't buy it. I'm not that fussed about being jacked and huge. I'm fussed about being healthy. I want to have a functional body, bit of muscle. Not that fussed about washboard stomach, but I don't want to be fat either. So I'll keep myself in shape. But I also think the gym is a really good place to go just to get away from things as well. It's a perfect, people often send me videos. Anyone out there who does, I'm sorry if it takes me a while to get round to them, but I always have like 20 to get through. And the gym is the place where I just whack in headphones. You kind of disappear into your own little space. One thing to be wary of, I do try and stay away from the ladies because, gyms are full of them these days, making eyes at you. I try and just stay away from it now. I'm too old for that. And with that, I should say another thing is lust. Be wary of that word of lust. Yeah, it's tempting to go and sleep with all the women. I get it. They're hot, it's attractive, it's alluring, pornography is alluring, I understand it, but these things really corrode your soul in time. It's like alcohol. If you're engaged in it right now, whatever, not my business to lecture you, but treat it like alcohol, try and drink sensibly, and if you can, I'd be moving towards the spirit, and the spirit will guide you away and realise, okay, this is fool's gold. I remember when I started to realise that, I had a dream that this beautiful woman was luring me in, very attractive, and as I went in to kiss her, she turned into a demon and her eyes sparked up. I remember this fluorescent blue light. I woke up like, like you do. And it made me think, this is my soul. It's like God telling me, be wary of these women. Of course, it's not the women that are bad. The women are beautiful, lovely, cherished souls, children of God. But Satan can work through them to get to us, just like he worked through Eve to get him to eat from the tree of good and evil. So be careful, brothers. I do believe that Christians are pretty much right when it comes to the relations between the sexes. But I don't want to lecture you on that. I'm much more a believer in just open your heart, open your mind, find the right path, and see what brings you peace and steadiness, and see what brings togetherness as a collective, as a tradition, and you'll find the way. I'm always here if you need some help on that. So anyway, one final note on that, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, all the things that are so useful to learn some basic self-defense. It's a dangerous world out there, but I think I personally found boxing very helpful, basic kickboxing, more as just a confidence tool, and at least I have basic understanding of how to defend myself. So it was less, I can kick certain guys' ass, and more, if something does kick off, at least I have basic moves that can keep them at a distance. Because remember once I was in London and a bunch of drunk lads charged on the tube train, bashed into me, and quite stupidly I said, sorry would be nice. And then, the lads, they were all right at the beginning, but then as the tube went off, they realised, actually, we got this guy cornered, we can give him a load of shit. And I remember thinking, what can I actually do here? If he did get violent, what can I do? And I thought, I need to learn some basic self-defense, which I did. And it was very, very helpful. Of course, it's a really good way to meet other like-minded fellas. A lot of the guys in these gyms, they don't tend to be woke types, they tend to be more men types, which are really good to make friends with. Finally, the last two, really, really helpful one. 90% of life is just turning up. Just have a go, lads. Just get out there and have a go. I've really learned that. I was very shy in my 20s and just forcing myself to turn up and have a go. I always realised, all right, I'm not the best, but I'm far from the worst. My experience was usually a little bit better than average in most things I did. Some a little worse. Most things are a little better. Some much better. Some things just, bottom of the class, but they were rare. They were rare. On the whole, I was always all right when I got there. And stick with it. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I'd always recommend sticking with something for a few months. Because sometimes you leave before the thing clicks inside of you. And you're like, okay, I'm getting it now. I'm starting to enjoy it now. I'm making friends a bit now. And especially I've always found, once you start to learn something, you can teach someone else. It kind of makes you love a subject all the more. I think that was it, Joubert, a French thinker, who said, to teach is to learn twice. And finally, I think it's worth remembering that you are capable of greatness, and modernity wants to really pull us down into really a limited economic worth. And there's going to be the Andrew Tate telling you, get your bouquet and all that sort of stuff, and all the women and the money, and cool, if that's what you want to chase, good for you, enjoy it. But most of us aren't going to be able to be the gazillionaires. There's always going to need to be people, to wait the tables, to keep the shops running, to tend the farms, to be the plumbers and the electricians. And I personally love each one of those people. I'm a traditionalist. I believe in having a harmonious community where we all work for one another. That's the ideal. I know we're far from that. But each of us are called to greatness in our own way. And it might not be expressed in terms of your earnings. If it is, great. And I'm not saying don't strive to earn and do well for yourself and break free and have financial freedom. Do. But at the same time, realise your greatness may come in another form. It might be bringing together community. It might be in your marriage. It might be as a father. It might be on the sports field as a sports teacher, your local team or whatever. It might be poetry, music, art, whatever it is. We all have a gift. But I'd always recommend with that gift, start simple with it. You're capable of greatness, but start simple. The other day, my dad loves golf, so I've been trying to bond with him. I'm playing a bit of golf. And I realised I can smack the ball quite far, when I get it right. But I realised when you go around the course, you can smack the ball. But if you keep trying to smack it all the time, more often than not, you're going to end up in water. The ball's going to go off into the rough or in trees. That 1 in 5 flies 300 yards down the middle. But most of them just all over the place. And I realised the game is actually doing what you can consistently to score low. And that's a really good metaphor for life. You're capable of awesome things, but what can you do that's consistent and steady, on a regular basis? And that will grow bit by bit by bit. And over the years, then you'll get to the point where you're almost smacking it. And 4 times out of 5, you're landing on the fairway. And you'll be pretty damn impressive at that point. So it's keeping it simple, building slowly. Yeah, you're capable of greatness, but you don't need to show it all the time and right now. Just be simple and let yourself grow. And very often, if you're willing to be patient and still, this is what I didn't know when I was young, other people will show themselves up. I realized I was always trying too hard. Just let it be. Let yourself be who you are and how you are, and let yourself learn over time, and you'll get there. Finally, I will say, just remember, what other people think of you isn't your business. It just doesn't matter what other people think about you. There will always be someone that hates you no matter what you do. No matter how good it is, there'll always be that person. And, again, going back to Jesus, they've probably got a demon inside of them. Say a prayer. Don't try and be the smarty pants of, you've got a demon inside of you and I haven't. If you're doing that, you've got a demon inside of you too. You want to be a smarty pants and look down on them. Just leave them be. Work on yourself. Doesn't matter. And generally speaking, there will always be good people that will be drawn to you if you're true. So don't worry about the rest of the world. Just be true and honest. Stick with those around you that you trust, that have a good word, and you'll be all gravy. All right, friends. I hope that helps some people out there. Do come along to the free call tomorrow if you'd like. Other than that, subscribe to the channel. And peace be with you, friends. More of this content coming down the line.